In patch 8.4, League of Legends received a lot of major changes.
Riot typically only releases patches this big during the preseason, but for whatever reason they decided to entirely switch things up in the middle of the season. This patch not only includes the expected buffs and nerfs, but a rework to all of the AP items as well. This includes items like Luden's Echo, Liandry's Torment, and Morellonomicon, just to name a few. With such a big shift in the game, the meta is certainly going to be different, and thus the support picks on this list might surprise you a little bit. What's going on, Nasty Nation? It's Nasty, and today I'm going to be covering the support tier list for patch 8.4. If you go on to feel as though I left out a champion who deserved a spot on this list, then be sure to let me know in the comment section below. With that being said though, let's jump right into the list, starting with Brand at number 5. Brand has been in a decent spot for a while now, but the recent changes to the AP items have set him over the top. Liandry's has been his go-to item for as long as I can remember, and with these changes, the item is even stronger on Brand. Although Liandry's no longer comes packed with the 15% magic penetration as it used to, it now comes with a new passive called Madness. This item passive reads that damaging champions increases the damage you deal by 2% per second until exiting combat up to 10%. Brand is already a monster when it comes to teamfighting, and this new passive within Liandry's Torment is only going to further increase his teamfighting potential. The amount of damage that Brand can now put out is absolutely insane, which makes him a very strong pick at the moment, and overall a great champion to carry with from the support role. The reason that Brand falls at number 5 on the list rather than higher up is for a few reasons. First of all, even though Brand can be somewhat of a lane bully, he really struggles in a lot of the lane matchups against a lot of the meta caster supports who I'll mention later on in the list. This is because Brand's poke can easily be countered by champions who can shield the damage from even occurring, or that can just heal to sustain through the damage. On top of this, another problem that Brand has is his mobility. Considering he has no movement enhancing abilities in his kit whatsoever, it can be very difficult to survive in fights, especially when against dive heavy compositions. It takes a lot of good positioning to play Brand effectively, but if able to do so, you'll be able to put out a lot of damage and essentially single-handedly carry games. Here's an example build and room page to take on Brand. The number 4 support on the list is going to be Zilean. Zilean is in a very similar situation to Brand in the sense that it is largely due to the recent changes to the AP items that he has found so much success. Zilean has a very diverse and effective kit, and now that he has the ability to build suitable AP items and do damage, he kinda just has it all. He has hard CC from his double bombs, short cooldowns from his W, slows and speed boost from his time warp, a revive from his R, and now a solid amount of damage from the new items. Zilean is also similar to Brand in the sense that, unlike typical supports who build defensive items such as Redemption or Locket or Knight's Vow, you're going to want to build him full AP. Your kit alone should be enough to peel for your team, so there's no need for defensive items that are used for the same purposes. On top of that, Zilean doesn't have any heals or shields, so items like Redemption and Ardent Sensor don't synergize whatsoever. The main reason that I put Zilean above Brand on this list is strictly because of his mobility. He won't get caught out and die nearly as much as Brand, and it really is that simple. The reason that Zilean isn't higher on the list is because caster supports still remain superior to tank and mage supports. I was hoping that the changes in 8.4 would knock caster supports out of the meta entirely, but as you'll go on to see from the top 2 picks on the list, that they are still the better option, or at least for now they are. Another reason Zilean isn't higher on this list is much less significant, but it's the fact that he doesn't really have an ideal keystone. Comet seems to be the most viable and the most common option, but even that doesn't work all that well, considering it will miss half the time if you're not able to slow your target. Brand has the same issue when it comes to Comet, but it's fixed eventually, considering he typically buys Rylai's very early on into the game. Here's an example build and room page to take on Zilean. My number 3 pick on this list might be as much of a shock to you as it was to me, and that pick is Blitzcrank. I really was not expecting Blitzcrank to originally be on the list, but I simply cannot argue with win rates, and his win rate has gone up immensely in patch 8.4. I wasn't quite sure why this was at first, but the more that I thought about it, the more it began to make sense to me. So there's 4 main types of supports, right? You have the caster supports, which includes champions like Janna and Soraka. You have the mage supports, which includes champions like Brand or Zyra. You have the tank supports like Leona or Alistar. And then you have the utility supports like Taric or Blitz. Of the 4, casters are currently the strongest, mage supports come next, and at least prior to patch 8.4, tank supports came third. However, with the meta shift, tank supports are now sitting at the bottom, which makes room for utility supports like Blitzcrank to have an increased win rate. Blitzcrank struggled against many of the previous meta supports like Braum and Alistar, and instead now he gets to lane against very squishy and immobile champions like Lulu or Nami. If you enjoy playing Blitzcrank, then lucky you, because this patch just pushed him into the top 3 supports. The only reason that Blitzcrank isn't higher up on this list is because he does eventually get outscaled. Even though he can completely stomp lane against caster supports, in the long run they still get the best of him. Here's an example build and rune page for Blitzcrank. Sitting at number 2 on my list, I have Nami. So Nami is another one of those support picks that surprised me a little bit, because although she is a caster supports, and caster supports are currently the strongest in the game, I definitely thought that some other picks like Soraka or Lulu would be higher than her in the win rate column. Once again though, I can't argue against win rates, and Nami is significantly higher than both of those picks. She also has a pretty high play rate, and anytime that a champion has a high play rate as well as a high win rate, it's pretty safe to say that they are a good pick. What makes Nami stand out from the other caster supports is going to be her hard CC and her lane presence. Sure, there are other caster supports out there who have the ability to CC, but none of them quite compare to Nami, who has a good amount of CC between her Q and her R. Her lane presence, on the other hand, is strong because of her W and her E. Nami's E is very reliable when it comes to slowing and damaging your opponent, and her W is a great tool when it comes to playing aggressively and trading, or playing defensively and sustaining. Overall, her kit is just really powerful, and it's for that reason that she's number 2 on my list. There is one reason that she isn't number 1, but we'll get to that in just a second. Here's an example build and rune page for Nami. And finally, the number 1 pick on my list of supports for patch 8.4 is none other than Janna. I can't even remember a time when caster supports were strong, and Janna wasn't the number 1 pick. Her kit has just about everything you could possibly want in a support, including CC, shields, heals, and most importantly, peel. Janna can peel for her carries so easily, and it's honestly pretty disgusting. She indisputably has the strongest peeling ability in the game, and it's for that reason that no other caster support compares to Janna.
On top of all of that, another aspect of Janna that makes her consistently good is the fact that she doesn't really have any weak spots throughout a game. She gets by pretty well in the lane phase, and can even win certain matchups, and in the mid to late game she is very difficult to beat in team fights.
I don't want to ramble about Janna too much though, because quite frankly, she's just very strong, and it's really as simple as that.
Here's an example rune page and build for Janna.
A few honorable mentions that just barely did not make the list are Lulu, Sion, and Fiddlesticks. I've already mentioned this, but I was actually expecting Lulu to be on the list rather than Nami. Obviously, that's not how things played out, but she's still a good pick, and in my opinion, she's probably the 3rd strongest caster support in the game right now, following Janna and Nami. Sion, on the other hand, was my number 1 support pick leading up to patch 8.4, but again, tank supports took a big hit as a result of the changes, which is why Sion's win rate has dropped. I still wanted to include Sion in the honorable mentions though, because I would say that if there was a viable tank support still left out there, that it definitely would be Sion. The final honorable mention is Fiddlesticks, and I wanted to shout out Fiddle because he received some buffs last patch, and combining that with the item changes, I think he has some real potential. I don't think he's as strong as some other AP supports like Zilean or Brand who did make the list, but he should still be pretty good. That is, however, going to wrap up the end of my support tier list for patch 8.4. I hope you guys did go on to enjoy the video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to help the channel grow. Also, like I said earlier, if you do feel as if there was a specific champion that I left out that I should have included in this list, please feel free to let me know in the comments section below. Anyways, that'll do it for me, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.